Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 stations, AM and FM stations, across the great state of Michigan. I'm here for 3 hours every week, have been for years, plan to be for many more years. Although, hey, I know my plans don't mean anything, but if the big guy says I'm going to be around for a while, I will certainly have no problem with that. Weren't the fall colors magnificent this year? It was the best fall color season I've seen in a long time. Breathtakingly, beautifully, magnificent. Just wonderful. Now, they're gone now, right? And that's to be expected. I wish the fall color season lasted a full month, but it doesn't. It only lasts for just a few weeks. But they were absolutely beautiful this year, and I'm kind of sorry to see the colors go. Of course, if you're a hunter, it's always nice to have those leaves drop, isn't it? If you're a squirrel hunter, if you're an upland bird hunter, if you're a deer hunter, it's nice to have those beautiful leaves drop so you can see into the woods. You can see further into the woods. And isn't it surprising how the woods will look different in November than they do in even September? You can be sitting in a spot or walking through a spot in September and say, man, this is thick. I can't see into the woods at all. Come back there in November and go, oh, man, I can see 200 yards over there. So it changes the feeling of the experience in the woods completely. The month of Rocktober is almost over now. Halloween coming up here very, very soon. So I'm kind of sorry to see Rocktober go, but a lot of deer hunters are very happy to see Halloween, to see the beginning of the whitetail rut. Now, the whitetail rut, the breeding season, a time when the testosterone in the bucks increases. Some of the bigger bucks might be a little easier to see during daylight because they're preoccupied with breeding. They're not as cautious as they might be the rest of the year. And that's why a lot of deer hunters look forward to the rut. People will say, well, when is the rut going to be this year? And I don't pretend to be an expert at all. But I always thought the rut kind of kicked off in, kind of for good in Halloween. Goes through the first week and a half of November. Statistically and biologically in Michigan, the majority of does have been bred by the November 15th opener of the firearm season, and that's why the season was put at that date. At least that's what I've been told by DNR wildlife biologists. Now, when I was down in Ohio last week, we did see some signs of the bucks starting to get a little rutted up. Their necks were starting to get pretty swollen up. I had a real nice 2.5-year-old 8-point come in front of me at 30 yards and make a couple of scrapes and work a licking branch. In fact, I wanted to shoot him. I was hunting with Bill Piles of Ohio Bow Hunting Outfitters, ohiobowhuntingoutfitters.com. In north of Columbus, kind of in central Ohio, in some very beautiful country, very wooded, very big timber, a lot of hills, and a lot of big whitetails. We being a group of Outdoor Magazine radio listeners, went down there to hunt with Bill for the first time last year. We were back again this year. In fact, we're going back next year as well. If you want to join us, I'd love to have you. We will go once again the third week in October. People say, well, why don't you wait and go during the rut? Well, there's two reasons there. Number one, it's more expensive to go on a rut hunt, but also, with most outfitters, it's harder to book a hunt during the rut because you've got guys who have been coming back year after year after year, and they've got those rut hunts locked up. So we went the third week in October, and man, was it cold. Remember how cold it got there for a while? And then we had that beautiful Indian summer weather. It was so cold in Ohio that you would figure that cold would have the big bucks up on their feet. And it did, but it was also really, really windy. I didn't shoot a buck. I did pass on that 8-point. Bill has a 120-inch size minimum. That means the buck has to have roughly 120 inches of bone on its head. This buck, about 110 inches. He just needed a little bit more. And as hard as I looked at him and as much as I wanted him to have just another 10 inches of bone on top of his head, I just couldn't make it happen. So I let him pass, and I'm completely happy with that. But it was, I think, the last morning of the hunt. I'm up on top of this hill in a beautiful setting. There was a 4-point in front of me and a fawn. They were feeding on acorns in front of me. And I see the 4-point look off to my right, and he's starting to get a little bit nervous. I'm thinking, that's a good sign. And I was sitting on an elevated, it was a blind. It was one of those muddy, M-U-D-D-Y, muddy blinds. That's the brand name, muddy blinds. They're fabric blinds, and they're kind of quilted. They're kind of insulated. I do like them. And so I'm about 6 feet off the ground. I'm watching this oak ridge. The 4-point looks off to the right. And then right in front of me, like 5 yards in front of me, maybe 7, 8 yards in front of me, all I see is this very white rack come walking in front of me, and my heart stopped there for a second. I thought, there's my shooter. There's my 120, 130-inch buck. Just didn't turn out to be the case. Oh, well. Oh, well. So we're going back next year. Oh, an interesting comment. While I was down there, I was, of course, posting pictures and posting video. A guy by the name of Shane Sullivan, who should be just so embarrassed. He should be so embarrassed, in my opinion. I posted a picture of me overlooking that same oak ridge, and I've got my Darton crossbow in front of me on shooting sticks, waiting for that big buck. Now, keep in mind, remember this, right? I had been hunting for the last few years with a recurve. I quit hunting with my recurve because I wasn't shooting it enough, and I didn't have the confidence that I could make a quick, clean, humane killing shot, which is what all hunters strive to do. All ethical hunters strive to do. So I thought, listen, Avery, you know you're not going to be practicing much this year, so why not just go back to the crossbow and increase your odds of making the shot that needs to be made on an animal? So I did, and I'm completely fine with that. Shane Sullivan. Did I say his name was Shane Sullivan? Shane Sullivan made a comment. It would help if you were a real man and hunted with a bow instead of your baby sister's crossbow. And then he went on to further make a stupid statement. I know crossbows are here to stay, but I'm absolutely against them unless you are 65 and older, handicapped, or using them for turkeys. I don't even know where to start. Now, normally what I would do is I would backtrack him on social media and find out what he was using. And if it was anything other than a stick and string, and if it was anything other than a musket, I'll guarantee you that I suspect he's using a compound, but there's nothing wrong with a compound. But why does it matter if I'm turkey hunting, it's okay to use a crossbow? I don't get that. It's not okay to use a crossbow for deer, but it's okay for turkeys? Somebody else said, and they said, Shane, you're kind of an idiot. That's probably the same thing they told Fred Bear when he picked up a compound. Well, here's where this story, I think, takes an interesting turn. Remember, I spent a little bit of time with Fred Bear. I don't pretend to have known him well, but I did spend some time with him at his Grouse Haven hunting camp near Rose City, Michigan. The first time I ever saw a crossbow was at Grouse Haven with the Bear Archery people on the range at Grouse Haven, and Fred Bear was looking over their shoulder with a great deal of interest, saying, that's an interesting piece of gear there. This might get more people interested in the sport of archery and hunting. So I'll tell you this for a fact, because I saw it with my own eyes. Fred Bear had no problem with crossbows. So why, Shane Sullivan, do you have a problem with crossbows and you can belittle other hunters for using it? Such comments are so stupid and so ignorant, they do nothing to further the sport of hunting. They do nothing to further the sport of bow hunting. They do nothing to cause cohesion in our hunting community. And I hate the word community because it's overused these days. Let people hunt their hunt. We got enough going on in the world these days without getting all this junk and negative energy involved in our beloved sport of hunting. So Shane Sullivan, I hope you're proud of yourself because you made the stupidest comment I have seen on Facebook this month. And that's a big, big deal. That's a big award. So congrats to you, Shane. Congrats to you. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, Dean Hall talking about Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger and how you can donate your venison this upcoming season. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in Manistee on WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your mid-Michigan tracker and angler quest headquarters. You know I love that. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Last reports I heard were that the fall walleye fishing on Saginaw Bay, just off Linwood Beach Marina there, was starting to heat up. I've seen some pictures of some real nice fish. And Linwood Beach Marina is a great place to get after them. And the ramp there will be open, well, until it ices up. So it's a great place to go. Check them out, linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Okay, so it's bow season now. The firearm deer season is coming up just around the corner. What are you going to do with that venison? And how many deer are you going to shoot? If you have extra venison, now I realize a lot of families aren't, right? You're going to eat everything you shoot and maybe then some, or you've got friends who want venison, or you've got family members who want venison. I get it. But what if you're going to have some extra venison? What are you going to do with that? You sure don't want it to go to waste. Dean Hall is with a group called Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger, and they've come up with a program that's a win-win for everybody involved. Dean, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Very good, Mike. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing great. I couldn't be better. So tell me about Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger. I think it's a great program. I heartily endorse it. How does it work?
Well, and thank you for your strong support of Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger through the years, Mike. Yeah, basically, we've been around since 1991, and anybody that shoots more deer than they feel that they could use or need, that they could go to any of our processors that are listed on our website at sportsmenagainsthunger.org. Call the processor, let them know they're going to drop off a deer to Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger for donation. Take it to that processor, and it doesn't cost the hunter anything. Processor processes it into venison burger, and all that venison burger is stayed locally to feed the hungry at food banks, pantries, and shelters.
No, it's a great program. How many years have you guys been doing this now, Dean?
Since about 1991, and last year was the largest venison processing that our processors did in distribution to food banks, pantries, and shelters. It was over 107,000 pounds.
107,000 pounds of burger.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So remind me again. Let's walk through the details. All right, I've got a doe tag. I shoot this doe. I've already got I already got a deer in the freezer. I'm not going to use this now. What do I do? How do I get this to the right people?
Okay, they could. Anybody could go to our website, sportsmenagainsthunger.org, and right on there you could go to our page that has it's a processor list and processor information page on our website. And it's got a processor list that you can download by county with the processor's name, location, and phone number, or you can use the drop pin map that we have on that same page as well.
So I take the deer, gutted, obviously. I take the field processed deer into this processor and just do I have to donate the whole deer? Can I get half of it back if I want?
Well, if you want to donate just a few pounds, you could donate just a few pounds of burger. We usually take the whole deer.
So this is more for the extra deer that people shoot. You get your freezer full and then donate more to others who need the help.
Yes.
And where does the meat go again, Dean?
It goes to all the local food banks, pantries, and shelters throughout the state. And is it ground up then just as straight burger, or do they put some pork in it or something else, or it's just straight good venison? Yeah, they put a little beef and or pork suet in the burger for binding material, because venison is so lean that it doesn't have any fat in it to bind it. So
and
they have to put a little bit of binding material in there.
And it makes it go farther.
Yes, it does.
Wow. Do you have a hard time getting people to take this venison because it is wild game in the way of the world these days? People are looking at this, or are these charities and these groups eager to get their hands on this?
Oh, the food banks, pantries, and shelters are very eager to get their hands on it. It's one of the nice things. Basically, it's a lot of people that utilize the food banks, pantries, and shelters. A lot of them are single-parent families. The vast majority of them are elderly people that are helping to take care of their kids, their grandkids. So elderly people, I get a lot of notes from grandmothers that haven't had venison in the house in a long time, and they really, really appreciate it.
Oh, so you actually hear from some of the people who benefit from this?
Absolutely.
That's got to be rewarding. That's got to be pretty cool.
It is. It's very cool.
So how much is this going to cost me as the hunter to drop this deer off?
It won't cost you anything. At the point of hunting fishing license sales, if you go on the DNR website to get your license, it'll pop up with a question if you would like to voluntarily donate $1 or more to the Sportsmen Against Hunger Fund. And if you click on that, that's exactly where those donations go to. It's a Sportsmen Against Hunger Fund. That the only thing that fund could be used for is to process venison to help feed the hungry.
I didn't realize that, Dean. So that's where the money comes from to pay these processors.
Yes, sir.
I got to believe that some of the processors do this for free, too. Maybe not?
Oh, what's that, Mike?
I said I got to believe some of the processors donate their time and just do it for free, too.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them do. A lot of them have been doing it for years.
Well, I just think this is a great project. Now, you've got drop-off points, I think, coming up, too, for the firearm season, Dean?
Yes, sir. We're going to have Frank's Great Outdoors is going to be having a deer donation drive on the 16th, 17th, 18th. Anyone that brings in a deer, they're going to give them a $20 gift card that they could spend in their store whenever they receive it. And Jay's Sporting Goods, always our very strong sponsor and promoter. They're going to be holding a deer donation drive on the 18th, 19th, 20th of November. Anybody that brings in the deer into that location has a chance to sign up to win a $50 gift card for Jay's. And anybody that submits a donation to Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger, or they could sign up at either one of those events, Frank's Great Outdoors or Jay's Sporting Goods, they could enter into our deer raffle for a chance to win a $100 gift card.
So where are these processors? You say that the list is on the website, sportsmenagainsthunger.org, sportsmenagainsthunger.org. But do you have them way up in the western UP as well, or no?
We have them as far as Sault Ste. Marie up in the UP. And we have usually around Delta County is where some of our other processors are over in the UP, not too far west.
I think this is absolutely wonderful. And just a reminder, too, though, if you're looking at, licenses online or stuff, if you haven't bought your deer hunting licenses, remind me again how that check box on the DNR app or website works as far as helping to fund you guys.
Yep, it'll ask if people want to voluntarily donate $1 or more to the Sportsmen Against Hunger Fund. When you click that, those funds go directly into a specific fund that's only used to pay for processing of deer to feed the hungry through the Sportsmen Against Hunger program. And if you go to a satellite vendor like a Meijer store or any satellite vendor that sells hunting fishing licenses, before you start your purchase, tell them that you want to voluntarily donate $1 to the Sportsmen Against Hunger Fund if you can.
Can people just donate to this cause? If, say I'm a deer hunter and I didn't get my deer this year, but I want to help out. Can I just make a contribution somehow to you guys, a financial, $1 contribution?
A lot of times we'll have memorial funds that are donated to Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger to remember a loved one who is a very strong sportsman or sportswoman. And a lot of times we'll get checks in our post office box, or we'll get a PayPal donation from our website as well.
How did you get involved in this, Dean? You haven't been involved since day one, have you?
I've been involved since about 1993.
Really?
Yep.
What got you? What caused you to get involved in this?
Well, as a young guy, and still at this point in time in my age, I mean, I've always been a giver, and I believe in helping out people that need help in a community. I look at it as not so much giving a handout, giving a hand up. And there's other people that are on the board of the Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger feel the very same way. We all work very well together, and I was approached back in '93 about representing the Michigan Bowhunters Association at that time on the board, and I told them, well, you know what, this sounds like a good deal. I'll do that, and it's been a long arrangement so far. Hunters
don't do this to make themselves look good, but one of the reasons I like this program, aside from feeding hungry people and putting this venison to good use, is it does put hunters in a good light.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, hunters are the number one conservationists, and we believe in giving back to the community when the community needs it, especially at a point in time like right now. You can align it with back during the pioneering time period, and one of our own slogans was pioneers fed the hungry, and today's hunters feed the hungry too.
The website is sportsmenagainsthunger.org, sportsmenagainsthunger.org. Give me the dates on the events at Frank's and Jay's again, please, Dean.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Frank's is going to be the 16th, 17th, and 18th of November, and Jay's is going to be the 18th, 19th, and 20th of November.
Sounds good, Dean. Appreciate you reminding us about this. The website, sportsmenagainsthunger.org, sportsmenagainsthunger.org. If you have an extra deer that you want to donate to a great cause, it won't cost you a dime. Go to the website, sportsmenagainsthunger.org. Find a processor near you. You can take the animal over, drop it off, and they will take care of the rest of it. I think it's a great, great program. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, I told you I was hunting with my Darton crossbow in Ohio, and I will be hunting the rest of the season with my the bow season, at least, with my Darton crossbow. Ted Harpham of Darton says they've got some new products coming up. In fact, one of them is out already. He'll announce that or talk about that right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry for 76 years. The company was started by Roland Boning, who invented Ferrule-Tite to glue at the time, broadheads to what were aluminum and even wooden arrow shafts. These days, Boning continues to innovate, come up with new products and manufacturing processes. Check them out online. You'll see what I'm talking about. Boning.com. BOHNING. Boning.com. A great Michigan-based company, and you know I love Michigan-based companies, including Darton Archery. Now, I've had a very good relationship with the folks at Darton Archery for many, many years. They're based in Hale. I've shot Darton bows over the years, the compound bows. I told you I was using one of their crossbows in Ohio this week, and I will here for the rest of the archery season. Ted Harpham is a good friend of mine, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to kind of bring us up to speed and talk about some exciting things going on at Darton these days. Ted, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure. Hey, before we get to business, how is your bow season going? Have you even had a chance to spend much time in the woods?
Well, Mike, thanks for asking. I did. I haven't had a chance in Michigan, but I was able to get out to New Jersey. Making some sales calls out that direction, and I was able to harvest a nice buck in New Jersey.
Who bow hunts in New Jersey?
I chuckle every time I say the word New Jersey and deer in the same sentence. But believe it or not, New Jersey is a great place to go. I always thought of it as being a big city.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of rural community in New Jersey. And, I've got some good friends out there, Tack Driver TV, Nick Albanese and those guys. And they invited me out, said, hey, come on out for our opener. So I happened to be in the neighborhood, so I went in.
Oh, wonderful. And congrats on that. So let's talk about the business side of things here. Of course, Darton ownership changed here a couple of years ago. How has that been, Ted?
Yeah, it's been almost 2 years now, not quite 2 years, and it's gone fantastic. I mean, we have changed just a bunch of stuff. Rex is still here. We're still doing the cam technology stuff for us and working every day. Believe it or not, he is just like the Energizer Bunny. That guy just does not stop.
And you're still here in Michigan. You haven't moved.
Yes, yep, that's correct. We'll never leave here.
Okay.
We love it here. We love Michigan. This is Darton's home, and this is where the plant will always stay. But now we've got a couple of new engineers, and we've added a bunch of new people and equipment. We're doing color fusion process now in the decorations. We're doing powder coating now. We've got a couple new bows that were just announced, by the way. The new Veracity 35, which is our first 35-inch axle-to-axle bow that we've had with a 6-inch brace height. It's got rave reviews. And we've got another one that's going to launch. We've just started putting some feelers out now on it and some of the social media aspects, and that's going to be the Darton Prelude, which is a completely all-new redesigned riser, all-new, completely redesigned cam. Can you believe that? We got a new cam system. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. With the new mod system. This bow is all 70-75 aluminum, T6 aluminum, the cams, the riser, the mods, the let-outs. It's got a roller guard system on it now, and so does our Veracity, the other new bow. 6-inch brace height, 32-inch axle on the new bow, and it's got speeds up to 347.
Wow. Are these target bows or are they hunting bows? Because I know you guys have done real well in the target world the last few months.
Yeah, I'd like to talk just a little bit about the target stuff in just a second if we could. But, yeah, these are hunting bows. We cut our teeth. Everything Darton's always been is we've been known as a really, really good hunting bow, handmade, hand-manufactured right here, everything right here in Michigan. And, we've got people that still shoot the SL50, the
Oh, my gosh, I know it.
Yeah, it's crazy. That just gives you an indication of how our bows last and the dependability and durability of Darton, and most of all, the shootability, because they're still shooting that good. So the new stuff is just phenomenal. And then with that being said, we've really been working on our target bow line, and we've got some terrific new target bows coming out. We've got the Tempest ET E3D, and we've redesigned the cam on that. We've got the Vegas ET and E3D, which are both staples in the industry, which now we've picked up. The latest addition to our shooting staff is Jack Wallace, which is a very well-known pro in the ASA circuit and the indoor spot shooting circuits. So it's going really well on that line. And then to your favorites, we've got 2 new crossbows coming out.
Really?
So, yeah, we've been working hard, really super hard, trying to make, one thing about crossbows with us is that we just don't have the warranty repairs. I mean, we spend a lot of time to make something that's very durable, that lasts really well and performs good. So we've got a new crossbow coming out now, 2 of them actually. One is going to be called our 370, Renegade 370, and then we've got an Outlaw 420, which is, it's got the narrow axle. It's got the reverse cam, not the reverse limb, but we're going to have adjustable stocks. We've got all sorts of good stuff coming, Mike.
I will look forward to that, Ted. I'll keep an eye on the website, dartonarchery.com, and the Facebook page as well. Ted, always a pleasure. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we're going to talk with Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council and their Here for Generations campaign. They've been doing a great job in letting people know the role of hunters and anglers and trappers in our world today. And then coming up in our second hour, we're going to talk with Mark Torregrossa about what we can expect for weather for the upcoming firearm season and the winter in general here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Tawas on WIOS. 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9, and you can hear us in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Rapid River Knives. As always, I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now. I carry it with me all the time, and I find myself using this thing all the time. I suspect that you use a knife quite a bit as well, so I would encourage you to go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us, and see what the folks at Rapid River have to offer. Their showroom is on US 2, just outside of Rapid River. If you're in the area, do yourself a favor and stop by. It's a very, very impressive facility. If you go to the website, you can see the different knives they make, the folding knife like I have in my pocket, skinning knives, fillet knives, hatchets, axes, kitchen knives. It's really a first-class operation, and these knives are handmade by craftsmen in the UP. Check them out online at rapidriverknifeworks.us. I want to turn our attention now to the Michigan Wildlife Council. This is a group that I have worked with and supported since they were formed a few years ago. When I heard about this group that was being designed and implemented to promote hunting and fishing and trapping here in Michigan, I thought, there is no better cause than that, and I jumped on board. Nick Buggia is a former chairman of the Wildlife Council and a longtime member, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, maybe I misspoke. Are you the chairman again? Are you the current chairman?
Yeah, I can't get rid of the position.
Well, good for you and congrats. I appreciate the hard work you're doing. First of all, how's your fall hunting season going?
It's going pretty good. We've got out bird hunting quite a bit, grouse hunting, and taking my fiance out to small game hunt. She's a new hunter. But they planted corn in my deer spot, so it's kind of like fishing. I've got some extra time to imagine what's running around out there before they cut the corn. So I haven't seen too many deer yet.
See, around me in the central part of the state, the corn came down early and is still coming down. I was thinking we're doing pretty good for corn, but if in your hunting spot there's still corn, that's all that matters to you. You don't care what the next county over is, right?
I guess not, no.
Yeah. So tell me about the Michigan Wildlife Council and the Here for Generations campaign.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we're tasked with educating the general public about the benefits of hunting and fishing and trapping and how it's funded. This year, we've really focused, kind of put all of our eggs in Southeast Michigan. For a number of years, we've got some demographics down there that have just been hard to budge. So, overall, we're doing great in the area. I mean, 7 out of 10 folks in Detroit can, identify the correct funding source for conservation, which is hunting and fishing licenses. More and more are learning that, management is a tool. Hunting is a management tool for healthy populations. So we are making some movement there, but we really just want to see what kind of impact we can make. And, along with the campaign this year, you're going to continue to see hunters and anglers being more of a focus in the messaging. That's sort of evolved from the start. And we're also developing a newsletter for hunters and anglers to kind of update them on the progress, what we've been doing, kind of what that dollar they're contributing is going to. We wanted to be able to kind of communicate with them a little bit more than we have in the past.
Yeah, because you've got a big group of hunters and anglers out there. Why not use them, us, as part of the as messengers? Yeah,
that's the thought process behind it, and trying to kind of onboard them with the message, but also just let them know we've got a lot of hunters and anglers that aren't in Southeast Michigan, and they might be saying, what are they doing? I don't see anything.
Well,
so
and I hear and I hear that all the time. So I think that's a smart move, Nick.
Yeah.
And I suspect you hear it as well.
Yeah, we do, but we only have so much money, and if we're advertising to people that already support hunting and fishing, we might not be spending that money properly. So that's
like preaching
the unfortunate part of it.
Yeah, like preaching to the choir. Well, Nick, listen, I as this campaign continues to evolve, please keep me informed. You've got an open invitation here on this microphone anytime, and good luck for the rest of the season. I hope that corn comes down for you too, by the way.
Me too.
Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council. The website hereformioutdoors.org. Hereformioutdoors.org. The website here for generations. Hereformioutdoors.org. We'll take a break here for the top of the hour. When we come back, I want to talk about what the weather could look like for the upcoming firearm season. Also, this upcoming winter with Michigan's meteorologist, Mark Torregrossa. Then Chad Stewart of the DNR checks in with some potential changes in our Michigan elk hunting plan. I also want him to answer the question, look at, when are we going to get baiting for deer back here in Michigan? If they admitted that maybe they overreacted for CWD, why not just bring baiting back? I'll ask him that question in the Ask Avery segment. That's coming up in hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. Heard on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. Yes, this is first and foremost a radio show, and I say that to kind of make the distinction, to kind of set this program apart from a lot of the other content that is out there. This is designed, Outdoor Magazine Radio is designed, produced, recorded, distributed, syndicated, uploaded as a radio show. And I would encourage you, if you can, to listen on your local radio station. There you get your local news and weather and ads and specials. Maybe there's a sale you want to take advantage of. Plus, the radio stations get the content before the podcast version of the show is uploaded. But, of course, there is a podcast version because podcasting is so huge these days. I do have a podcast version of the radio show available. You can hear that podcast on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, on the Facebook page, Amazon, Audible, Twitter, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, the yada, yada, yada. The whole, let's just say anywhere, probably literally anywhere that you can hear a podcast, you can hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show, including YouTube. I also put it up on YouTube. But I do love podcasting, and each month I do podcasts for Offshore Tackle and Angler Quest boats, Polar Craft boats, and Primal Tree Stands. In fact, when we're done here in the studio, we're going to record this month's Primal Tree Stands podcast as well. Regardless of how you are hearing my voice, when you are hearing my voice, I do appreciate it. There is a lot of content out there, and the fact that you are hearing me right now, I do certainly appreciate it. So this outdoor lifestyle that we love so much, one of the reasons I love it is that things are out of our control. When we are chasing critters, they have the ultimate power. They make the decision whether they're going to cooperate with us. When we're fishing, are those fish going to bite? Are we going to be able to find those fish? And then you've got this overriding thing of Mother Nature always throwing the weather at us. The weather plays a huge role in our hunting and fishing activities. When I was down in Ohio last week, it was cold, but it was also very windy and very rainy. That affected the hunting. We've got the rut coming up here, the whitetail rut coming up. We've got firearm deer season coming up here. What's the weather going to be like? When I want to know what the weather's going to be like, I turn to Michigan's meteorologist, Mark Torregrossa, and I've got him on the phone line this week for you. Mark, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. You might hear a little bit of excitement in my voice because it looks like we got some weather coming this winter.
Some weather. And I do want to talk about that. But first, you personally had a very interesting situation here the last few weeks. You're a Michigan guy, but you've got a house down in Florida as well. Did you get hit by that hurricane, Mark?
We did. My wife and I were a little younger than retirement, but, you kind of got a plan for the future. So we stuck our neck out, and we got a place down by Inglewood, Florida. It's on the Gulf Coast. It got hit by the hurricane. So we need a new roof. We need all new soffits. We need a new pool cage. I learned how to cut a pool cage apart with a Sawzall and a grinder. We need a few drywall ceilings. But in all, we feel very fortunate because we talked to like 2 doors down. I saw a guy cleaning up my neighbor's yard. I went over and talked to him. He need any help? He's like, I live in Fort Myers, my house. And he indicated, he said, my house is filled with water right up to his neck, and it floated away. Wow. So there are people in the Fort Myers area and around there that lost everything. And we have just a big mess and probably 6 months of, fixing this and fixing that.
Were you down there? Did you see this? Have you seen a hurricane before in person?
I have not seen a hurricane before. We just owned this home, so I've been preparing it for a hurricane. So I had hurricane impact resistant windows put in by a great builder 1 week before the storm. Saved the entire house, to be honest with you. And, some of these things, I believe, could be used in Michigan on certain sides of your house. If you live on a lake and you say, wow, I always get the 70 or 80 mile an hour wind in a storm, I would say, on the west and the southwest side of your house, put some of these hurricane impact resistant windows in for safety. They're not much more than a normal winter. So we've been preparing for it. I've never seen one, but the after effects, I didn't like. It looked like just a war zone, so to speak, and a big mess.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that you had that damage. I'm glad you're on the mend down there. Let's bring it back closer here to Michigan. It's been a weird last few weeks. We had that really, really cold snap that felt like winter was just around the corner, and then we had our Indian summer, and it was absolutely beautiful and warm. What can we expect, Mark? What's coming up?
Well, this is the theme, volatility. And, when I mention that in weather, people always think, oh, what a cop-out. Michigan weather is always changing from hot to cold and back forth. But the current pattern that we're in, what we're calling the triple dip La Nina, which means we're going into the third winter in a row with the La Nina, only happened 2 other times, and I have some stats on that. It's a volatile type weather pattern. So what happens is the cold pocket is up there, and the cold pocket is large. I've looked at the weather, at this time of the year at many times, and the cold pocket is not up there. And by what I mean up there is you look at all of Canada, and it's a December type cold, and it's a large pool there. But the warmth is also still there. Now, does that cold pocket drop into the western half of the U.S. and send the warmth bubbling up our way, or does that cold pocket ooze southeast into the eastern half of the U.S. and send the warm pocket back to the west? So that will be the trick. And right now, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, it looks like the cold pocket drops into the western half of the country, sends mostly mild air our way, and puts us in a southwest flow, which is a stormy type pattern. Not so much everyday rainfall, but once a week we could get a wind generator. We could get a half-inch to inch-and-a-half rain in the wet part of the storm, and then behind it we could get the wind for a day or so.
Remind me.
It's pretty volatile, and you also have to watch the weather, and I love this for hunting and fishing. You got to watch the weather because there will be a couple of great days of the weather that you like to hunt in. There will be a transition day, and there will be a couple of days of the type of weather that you don't like to hunt in, whatever that is.
Remind me what the La Nina is.
Okay. La Nina is an ocean condition where the surface water along the equator out from South America to Australia is colder than normal. It's the opposite of El Nino. El Nino is better known to people. El Nino is when that water warms up a lot. La Nina is when that water turns much cooler than historical, and usually it lasts a year or so. Sometimes it lasts 2 years off and on, and rarely, this is only the third time since 1950, that it will be the third winter that we're going into it. So we have a couple of scenarios to compare it to, and they are quite interesting.
And that affects us here in Michigan. What happens way out there, halfway across the world? We can feel that here in Michigan?
Yes, because remember, our storms are born in the Pacific. And if you've got warm water, it alters the jet stream pattern and where the storms are born. And if you have cold water, it alters it. So what happens, a typical La Nina pattern is a jet stream that is very volatile, very wavy. Okay, so it can bring in warmth, and then it can bring in, I don't know if I want to use the word extreme cold, but it can bring in much colder than normal weather for a while. And it's that kind of pattern. In a typical La Nina winter, it's warm and dry in the south, so Florida, the southeast, would be warmer and drier than normal for the winter. It would be colder than normal from about Minnesota back into the Dakotas and into Canada. And Michigan sits in between with varying weather that once you do the math, it could come up to be like a quote-unquote normal temperature winter, but it could be of extremes of a couple of weeks of much warmer than normal, followed by a couple of weeks of much colder than normal. And usually in that transition comes a decent-sized, large-scale storm system.
We're talking with Michigan's meteorologist, Mark Torregrossa. You can follow him online at mlive.com. That's mlive.com, or his website, farmerweather.com, farmerweather.com. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, I'm going to ask Mark, okay, what does all this mean? Is it going to be a cold winter? Is it going to be a snowy winter? And what's it going to be like for deer season, too? We'll get those questions answered and more after the break with Michigan's meteorologist, Mark Torregrossa, right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Carroll on WKYO, that's 1360 AM, and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear the show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. And you can hear us, let's see if we can go north of the bridge. Yeah, let's go to Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Brenton USA Hunting Rifles. AR-style, highly accurate, tough, and dependable rifles made right here in Michigan, just down the road from the governor's office. Lifetime guarantee. The website, BrentonUSA.com. That's BrentonUSA.com. I will be using my Brenton 350 Legend for the upcoming Michigan firearm deer season. Now, the firearm deer season in Michigan is interesting because if you get downstate, there are a couple of factors that are really can impact the harvest. Number one is the corn down where you're hunting. Now, where I am, the corn is pretty much down. The other factor is the weather. Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be snowy? Michigan's meteorologist, Mark Torregrossa, is a guy who can answer those questions at least better than any of the rest of us can, and he's on the Outdoor Magazine phone line right now. So, Mark, you're talking about ups and downs, very volatile weather patterns. What's it going to be like here, for the next few weeks leading up to the rifle season, or maybe mid-November into the rifle season?
Okay, I think the day you hunt will be real important because the weather is kind of in a regular pattern. I would say 2 to 3 days of warmer than normal conditions, a storm system comes through. It's about a one-day storm system, lots of rain, lots of wind, and, on the backside of it, some possible snow, and then about a 2-day cool down. So I see that pattern sticking into firearm deer season, which means I can't tell you what exactly it will be like on opening day just yet. Start watching the weather, and we're really pretty good about 7 days out. So, if you get to about November 8th, then start watching weather. But I would say that I don't think the 2 weeks will be totally too warm to hunt, and I don't think the 2 weeks will be totally frigid the whole time. I think we'll probably have 2 cycles of up and down and a storm in that 2-week period.
So again, volatility is you've used that term a couple of times, and then when you and I were talking off the air a couple of days ago, you were describing what the winter weather could look like, and I said, Mark, you're scaring me a little bit, and you said, maybe it's a good idea to be a little concerned this winter. What's coming up?
Okay, so remember, triple dip La Nina. So this is going to be the third La Nina winter. So we look back to 1975 and 1976. I know you remember that.
I do.
Winter, Mike. You remember March of 1976. And I'm not saying that we could have a 2 to 3 inch ice storm like we did there, the worst ice storm in modern day Michigan history. But the National Weather Service, I talked to the forecasters and made the forecast. They're pretty well convinced we're going to have a wetter than normal winter. They're calling for average temperatures over the 3-month period of winter, and that the effects of the La Nina keep it wintry into March and April. So I think we're going to have a true winter, and then the volatility. So we could have a 2 to 4 week period where it turns much warmer, than normal. I don't know if that's December, January, or February, but we could also have a 2 to 4 week period where it's much colder than normal as well. And that's what 76, 77 and 2000, 2001 show. 2000, 2001 wasn't a crazy bad winter, but December had 35 inches of snow in Lansing, and that's a lot of snow for 1 month. So I think it will be stretches of, wow, this is real winter, and then a stretch of, wow, it turned around and did an about face.
I feel like, anecdotally, when I was a kid growing up, I feel like we consistently had worse weathers. I feel like it was colder and there was a lot more snow. Do the stats prove that, or is that just because I was a kid and that's the way I remember things?
The stats show it in the 70s because we had 4 or 5 notable winters in the 70s when you and I were kids. But also the stats show that we always got to talk about the 800-pound gorilla. You know, I always do, that the globe is warming, the oceans are warming, the polar regions are warming. So in general, the winters are becoming warmer. And that tends to make, quote unquote, less severe feel, because even if you get a stretch where it's really stormy, really snowy, we usually get a week or 2 weeks where it lets up, things melt off. We see the roads again. We see the edge of the road. We see the grass a little. It gives us a little bit of a relaxed from the winter. Also kind of at times lately has wreaked havoc on the ice fishing. Now this winter, I would say we lean toward normal to colder than normal, not warmer than normal. Remember, one thing to take away from this is El Nino winters are warmer than normal. Those are kind of the negative side for a person that likes to ice fish. This would not be the negative side, but it might come as ice building in a month period. And I don't know if that's December or if that's January or if that's February, but what I'm saying is you'll probably have a month period where it's much colder than normal and you'll build some good ice.
So take the politics out of it. Is global warming the real deal? Is it a real thing?
It is a real deal. What it is greenhouse gases. You know, first off, back up. Let's just look at the data. If you take the global average temperature, I'm not talking about your temperature at Midland for the last 2 months or my temperature wherever. I'm talking the global average temperature over the years, and you average those for every year, like say a 3 or 5 year moving average. The global temperature is going up. The ocean temperatures are going up. The polar regions are warming much faster than the equator, and halfway in between where we sit, we're warming halfway in between those two rates. So it is a real thing, and basically the reason is we've put more insulation on the house. Okay, let's say we've kept our furnace the same, so to speak, the sunshine, which does vary in heat, colder and warmer at times, but you go and take your siding off your house and you put 2 inches of foam extra on the outside of the house and then Tyvek and you re-side it. Your house is going to be warmer in the winter. And that's what the greenhouse gases have done, is it just insulates the heat that we produce and keeps it in more. It's a real thing.
The way you guys forecast weather these days, I'm fascinated by it because, you know, back, years ago when you and I were both working at local commercial TV stations, I feel like the technology has increased exponentially since then.
Oh, gosh. When I started in 1989, we had 2 computer models. We got what it would look like at 12 hours out, 24 hours out, 36 and 48 hours out. So what if there was a snowstorm at 30 hours out? We had to interpolate between one frame at 36, one frame at 48. The resolution was, let's call it a 45-mile by 45-mile square. So it would say, boom, 45 miles has this kind of precipitation. We know that there could be 3 zones of weather in a 45-mile square in Michigan. Now we have models that go out 16 days, and the timing on them, like I told you, hey, start looking at the opening day weather about November 7th or 8th. That tells me we're pretty confident out to 7 days on maybe 6 hours within the start of precip. time. So it's really pretty incredible, I do believe.
You talk about Michigan weather patterns. Is it harder to be a meteorologist here in the Great Lakes state than it would be, say, out in the plains, out in the Dakotas?
I think a lot of people use that cop-out, but I don't think so, because here's a couple of things. The models do well on a full-blown, mature storm system and timing it. Those storms get jumbled up in the Rockies, and then they come out to Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and they're a full-fledged, mature storm system by the time they hit Missouri, and then the models pick up on that, forecast them into Michigan. So in that sense, it's a lot easier. Now, everybody says, well, the lake effect can change it. Well, once you have experience, 10, 20, or like I do, 33 years in the Great Lakes of professional forecasting, sometimes it makes it easier because, you know, even if the storm system misses you, then the snow or the rain is going to come behind it. And the average person, you using the forecast, doesn't know that it rained for the wrong reason, but it did rain.
I talked early on about how we as hunters and anglers really rely and depend on the weather. Another group that you work with, farmers, it's a big deal for them. What does the corn harvest look like? Have you seen those numbers at all? Am I asking you a question out of the blue, or can you give me an answer?
No. I work with a lot of farmers, and it's the harvest is variable because the rain pattern was very variable. They'll go to one field, and we're getting 260 bushel to the acre, which is quite phenomenal for, say, a 40 or 80 acre field. And they may go down 3 to 5 miles down the road to another field, and they're getting 150 bushel to the acre because our rain was sporadic this summer, and some spots just got it super timely, and that made a great crop in that and not so much in another place. So in all, everybody's saying, well, I got half good and I have a half excellent, or I have half excellent and half not so good. And so it's going to be probably an average to a little bit above average yield for, say, the thumb, which is probably about 200, 210 bushel to the acre on corn. And to your thing about will the corn be down, I've been talking to them this week. They've had a 7-day stretch where they're doing great. Most of the farms are 50% harvested on corn. They are waiting on the sugar beets because it's so warm. So the corn will probably be almost all harvested next week before the next rain, or this week coming up.
Excellent. Good news. Mark, you're such an interesting guy to talk with. I always enjoy our conversations, and I think maybe next summer we need to get back out on Saginaw Bay on the Angler Quest and spend some time on the water again.
Oh, I know that's the case.
I'll look forward to it. So we can find you at mlive.com and farmerweather.com, right? Any place else?
That's about it. Facebook, but mlive.com is a good place to start.
mlive.com. Mark, always a pleasure. I appreciate your insight, and we'll talk again.
Okay, sounds great.
Mark Torregrossa, I call him Michigan's meteorologist. Again, mlive.com, a good place to find him online, and always has interesting content that he provides. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll check in with Chad Stewart of the DNR. Chad is the big game specialist. I think he wants to talk about some proposed changes to our elk hunting, or maybe just our elk program here in Michigan. Also, I'm going to follow up with this week's Ask Avery question, talking about baiting for whitetails in Lower Michigan. That's coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ, that's 1090 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Michigan-made VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. VersaSkins owner Paul Perrone has come up with a great concept. Look, why spend a bunch of money on different hunting clothes in different patterns when you can buy one good set of hunting clothes, water resistant, wind resistant, and warm, and then just snap on and zip on an outer liner of a different camouflage pattern. You can go from upland hunting to deer hunting to blaze orange to snow camo. I was wearing my VersaSkins down in Ohio last week while we were bow hunting down there, and it was really cold, and I was nice and warm. Check them out online at versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. I want to turn our attention now to Chad Stewart, who is with the Michigan DNR. He's their big game specialist. We often think of Chad as just a whitetail guy, but he also covers elk and moose as well. How cool is that? Chad, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing real well. So listen, what are we talking about this time around, Chad?
Yeah, I think the big thing that we've got going on in at least our elk program is that we've got our final elk management plan, I guess, draft that's available for the public to comment on. So for those individuals who don't know, a lot of our game species, specifically elk and whitetail deer, have a management plan that really guides our management recommendations for a 10-year period. And our elk one was last approved in 2012, so it expired in this coming year. So we went through this fairly substantial process to go through and update and try to revise some of that plan. And it's now available for the public to comment on, just to make sure that the advisory team that is put together of different stakeholders and partners that have differing opinions on elk come together and make sure that everything sort of aligns with the interest that they see and is reflected in the final plan. So
are we looking at any proposed changes in the way you manage the elk herd?
That's a good question, and the answer is no. It's nothing really too major in this plan, so we're going to continue to move things forward the way we have been. The three primary goals in our current elk plan are to, number one, sustainably manage elk within their habitat. Number two, manage elk through the use of hunting. And three, it's basically to talk about elk or, have different varying communication pieces about elk to inform folks that, about elk and the value and some people don't even know that they exist in Michigan. So, starting there. And those three goals are primarily the same. Additionally, the same goal population is going to remain the same for the next 10 years. And that's a range of 500 to 900 elk. And as long as the conflicts don't start going too crazy, we'll be managing those on the upper end. So we have a lot of sightability, visibility, but also a lot of hunting opportunity for individuals as well.
A huntable, viewable Michigan elk herd. That's pretty much sums up the goal, doesn't it?
It really is. And, to put it into perspective, we feel like our last management plan has done really well. Over the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, we've taken probably close to about 1,200 elk out of this population, and we still have a population of about 1,200 elk. So, you think about the definition of sustainable management, and our elk herd really is the definition of that. We've been harvesting a surplus of elk that we have in our population, providing opportunities, and we still have a very strong, healthy population there in northern Michigan.
So how does somebody see this plan or comment on this plan, Chad?
Yeah, we had a press release that just went out, I believe it was last week. So you can just go to our website, which is www.mi.gov/elk. You can review the plan there. We're taking comments through November 11th. And that's probably the best way to do that. So I would encourage anybody to do that. You can also submit a comment by email, and that's just simply to dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov to get your thoughts on record.
And then is this the commission that approves this, or how does this work?
This actually is a director approval, so we will present it to our Natural Resources Commission at their November meeting. So we'll talk about it there. That's a really good forum for public comment. So it's advertised through the commission process. We'll continue to take public comment, like I said, through November 11th. At that point, we'll compile all the public comment, check it with, make sure that we're not missing anything out of the plan that we need to go back and sort of correct. after consulting with the members of this advisory team that helped us through this process. And then in December, it will go before our DNR director for signing.
Yeah, the Michigan elk herd is a beautiful, wonderful resource that a lot of people don't know about. I appreciate the fact that you guys are working to maintain that. Chad, we got to take a break. Can you hang around for the Ask Avery segment?
I can, yeah.
I appreciate that. The website Chad was talking about, mi.gov/elk, mi.gov/elk. If you want to take a look at that management plan, that proposed management plan, and I would encourage you, if you have not seen Michigan elk, head on up or down, depending on where you live, to the Pigeon River Forest and check them out. They are a beautiful, magnificent animal, and it's really cool that we have them. Now, if we could just get enough moose to have a moose hunt like they promised us back during elk moose lift, that would be cool too, but that's a different topic. We'll take a break. More with Chad Stewart right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. And you can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. And a reminder, the way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me a question that you would like me to answer directly, or I can pass it along to somebody at MUCC or DNR or something like that. And that's what Greg Lapham did this week. He sent me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And that is the best way to get these Ask Avery questions to me. So Greg Lapham sent me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. He says, a few weeks ago, you had Chad Stewart from the DNR on your radio show. He admitted they might have overreacted, his words, overreacted to CWD, chronic wasting disease. With that in mind, will baiting ever come back to the lower peninsula? After all, he says, food plots and natural foods like apple trees also congregate deer. So, Chad Stewart, again, I appreciate you sticking around for this Ask Avery segment. You heard the question. What's the answer?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one we get quite a bit. So I guess the best way for me to put it is that I can't look into the future to see what the recommendations or what the decisions are going to be to tell if baiting is going to come back or not. What I can tell you is that I don't see a recommendation coming from the DNR anytime soon to allow baiting back in the lower peninsula. That's something I think we're still pretty strong about, and I don't see that recommendation changing. That being said, the DNR does not make the final decisions. If the Natural Resources Commission decided that baiting had to come back, or if there was a bill that was passed and signed by the governor that brought it back, these are all ways that baiting can come back. But from the DNR standpoint and what we can control, I don't see us making that recommendation anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's what I thought your answer was going to be, Chad. And there is that specter out there of politics getting involved. If certain groups get to the right politicians and push that type of thing, I mean, that would be an option in the system, right?
Yeah, there's different ways that laws are developed, especially, conservation or game management laws. Most of them go through the Natural Resources Commission, but some things can go through state legislature. And, a lot of those things can be out of our control. And unfortunately, you're right. Politics can play a role in some of this. And, we try to control what we can control and make recommendations based on the information that's available. And then the decision that is made beyond that is really outside of our department's control.
Is the lack of interest in baiting from the department, is that purely a biological perspective, or is there some social science involved in some ways here as well?
So So it's a really great point, and we get that too. The department's stance on it is that when you put bait onto the ground, you're going to force interactions between deer and specifically members of deer families, between deer families that don't have the same level of, engagement, contact, et cetera, that they would normally have under normal circumstances. And if you think about what the intent of baiting is meant to do, it's meant to bring animals to a certain location with increased frequency and have them occupy that space a lot longer. So when you're there hunting over them, you have a higher chance of seeing them and potentially taking them, in the hunting season. If that bait isn't there, they're not going to visit that area. They're not going to contract one another. There's obviously feces urination that's going to occur. And from a standpoint of CWD, that's a potential contamination spot and an exposure site. So we're actually working and partnering with some researchers at Michigan State University. I hope that information comes out next year. Some of this information is very preliminary, but it's actually trying to attempt to quantify the impact of baiting and the contact rates associated around these sites, especially as it relates to food plots and whatnot. So I think there's going to be some really interesting, intriguing information coming out here, hopefully in the next year or so, that can help show, some of the biological impacts of baiting that has never really been done before.
Yeah, I would look forward to that as well, because you and I both know this question of when's baiting coming back. It's never really going to end. You're going to get asked this until you retire.
For sure. Absolutely.
All right, Chad, listen, always a pleasure. I appreciate your time. Thanks for helping us out with the Ask Avery segment, and thanks for the info on the elk herd.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, Chad Stewart of the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR is the website there. And again, thank you to our friends at Security Credit Union for making the Ask Avery segment possible each week. I've got one right here. Where did that go? Don and Brenda asked me, and this is going to be next week, any restrictions on using electronics for deer hunting, such as CCTVs, monitors, cameras, the ability to pan, tilt, zoom? That's an excellent question. That's Don from Remus. Don, that will be the Ask Avery question for next week. That's a great suggestion. If you want to suggest a question, email it to me, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. We'll see if we can't get it on the air. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, we're talking fishing and developing a new crankbait with Mark Romanack of Fishing 411 TV. That's right here on Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan. I'm here for 3 hours each week talking about the history and tradition of the outdoors, primarily here in our great state of Michigan. Hunting and fishing, shooting, trapping, conservation issues, wildlife issues, even some wild game cooking. And coming up at the end of this hour, we will have wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar on with us once again with another great recipe. As I look at the rundown for this week's show, pretty much we've been talking about hunting. And that makes sense, right? This is the end of Rocktober. We're coming up to the whitetail rut, Halloween just around the corner, so it does make sense to talk about hunting. But man, there's some great fishing going on this time of year too. If you're one of those people who doesn't hunt, a good chance you might have a little more open spaces on the water that you fish. Although as more and more people get dialed into this concept of trophy fall fishing, and I'm thinking, man, maybe primarily walleye at this point, you do see a lot of people out there on the water. I love to fish. I absolutely love to fish. But I know I'm not that good at it, and I'm fine with it. I catch my fair share of fish, and I enjoy it, and I can take people out, and we can catch fish, and we have a good time. But I really respect people who have this whole concept dialed in, and their brain is wired in such a way that they can go on the water and say, okay, here's where I need to go. Here's what I need to do. Here's how I need to do it. Mark Romanack is a guy who I have worked with for years, followed for years, and have much, much respect for. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line for this third hour of the show. Mark, welcome back. How are you?
Mike, I'm doing great. It's good to hear your voice, my friend.
Always a pleasure to talk with you. How is your fall going? Have you been out and hunted at all, or have you been spending your whole time on the water?
No, actually, I've been doing a little bit of hunting. We have our annual trip that we go to Canada every year, duck hunting, of course. That was very successful this year. Got a new lab puppy that we took up there. Her name is Annie, and so she came home with over 100 retrieves, and so I would consider that a pretty successful start for a dog that's only a year and a half old.
I would say so for sure. Yeah, I'd forgotten. You do make that trip. Saskatchewan?
Yeah, and we've been going up there forever. I think this is our third decade of heading north there. It's still the best waterfowl hunting on the continent, and I really look forward to it. It's my break. It's the only vacation I take in a given year. But the rest of my time pretty much focuses on fishing.
How before we go into that, how is bird hunting up there different from down here? Is it strictly a numbers game? Is that why you go up there, or is it the overall experience?
No, I think it's two things. It's numbers, one. I mean, the prairie pothole region is where 80% of the waterfowl in the North American continent are reared, and so there's more birds there. But more importantly, it's all private land, and it's open access to hunters. If you knock on a door, talk to a private landowner, ask permission to hunt, there's about a 99% chance they're going to tell you yes, which is unique because if we had that many birds in places in the States, I'd all be leased to big dollar outfitters, and the common man would just not have an opportunity to hunt it. And that's just not the way it is up there. Up there, the land is not leased, it's open, and the birds are considered to be part of the public domain, and the landowners don't own them. The public owns them. And so the landowners are very gracious about allowing us permission to hunt on their properties.
Well, I know you're a hardcore hunter, but of course, most of us know you as an angler, as a fisherman. Mark, how did you get to the point where you are today? How did you end up, from being a naturalist at the Greenpoint Nature Center in Saginaw to being who you are today? How'd you get there?
A good swift kick in the butt really helped me. Really ironically, I liked my job as a naturalist at the Nature Center in Saginaw, and I might still be there today if that job had not gone away. But that job, the funding for it, dissolved. And in doing so, I had to find something different to do with my life. And a friend of mine suggested that I start writing for outdoor magazines. And so I threw my hat in the ring there and tried a little bit of that. And I had some success early on, and then grew that into a full-time business. And then, of course, outdoor writing eventually evolved me into the television business, thanks to some help from folks like yourself.
How about this concept of the troller's Bible, precision trolling? Where did that come from?
Well, actually, the original idea of that came from a dear friend of mine, Dr. Stephen Holt. And Steve was my tournament partner back in the days when I was fishing team tournaments. And Steve had this idea that if you could control the variables associated with crankbaits, if you could control your lead length and your trolling speed, your line diameter, those types of variables, that you could accurately predict how deep a crankbait would go. And it just so happened that Steve was also a registered scuba diver, licensed scuba diver. And so essentially he came up with the idea of dragging crankbaits past a scuba diver to document how deep they go below the surface. And it was a phenomenal idea, and it worked absolutely perfectly. And so essentially I've spent the better part of the last 25 years testing crankbaits to find out how deep they go, documenting that information, and selling it through our phone app.
Between the app, your tournament days, your television fishing days, I feel comfortable in saying I think you know more about trolling and crankbaits than anybody that I know. Having said that, you recently worked on this project of bringing a new bait to market. I'm fascinated by this. How does this work, and what can you tell us?
Well, there's no surprise, and it's no secret that trolling crankbaits for walleye would be my favorite way of fishing. I have done a lot of it. I have a lot of faith in it. And we were very fortunate. Both Jake and I were very fortunate, my son Jake, in that we were approached by a company called Bill Lewis to design a crankbait here not that long ago. And if you're familiar with Bill Lewis, they're the people that made the rattle trap. It's an iconic bait that catches bass like no other. Actually catches walleye very well also, but it's not a trolling bait. They wanted to jump into what I call the Lake Erie trolling market. And as you know, Lake Erie's on fire, has been for some time now. Everybody wants a piece of that crankbait market. And so they came to us and said, what would it take to develop a crankbait under the Bill Lewis line? And I said, basically, we'd be happy to help you, but it's going to take time. It took about 2 years through various prototyping to come up with a bait that we feel comfortable going to market with. That's how long it takes to go through various different versions of a prototype. And they send you the first ones, and then you see what's right with them and what's wrong with them. You change them, you tweak them. They send you another version and another version and another version. It literally took 2 years to refine what we have today.
So is your name on this publicly, or is this all behind the scenes?
No. We kept it real quiet through the whole process, didn't really tell anybody what was going on until it was time to release the bait. They released it at ICAST back in July, and they call it the Precise Walleye Crank. And the idea behind it is that it's precisely designed that when you tie it on and fish it, it doesn't need to be tuned. It's going to fish right out of the package. It's a little bit deeper diving bait than you might associate with most minnow divers. Has a very steep dive curve, which means you can get it deep on short lead lengths, which makes it very, very fundamentally important for targeting walleyes in the Great Lakes region. We often have to fish 20, 25, 30 feet down to catch walleyes here in the Great Lakes.
Does it come in multiple sizes?
No, currently there's just one. There will be a second version. This first version is about a 4.5-inch bait, which would be, to put it in perspective for you, it'd be about the size of a reef runner, which I know you're very familiar with. And the bait is a minnow diver. It's got a little bit wider bill. The idea was to come up with a bait that would have good action at slow speed for cold water trolling, and also a bait that would have good action at high speeds for summertime trolling. So we wanted to come to market with a lure that wouldn't just work, spring and fall, but would work spring, summer, and fall.
So did you get involved in the color patterns, or just the I don't mean just, but strictly the body shape and the action of the bait?
It's interesting because they make these prototypes with 3D printing machines, okay? And the plastic that they use is fairly brittle. It's not the kind of plastic like an ABS plastic or a butyrite that they use for making finished crankbaits. And so they don't have the ability to do special finishes. Like, for example, I like chrome baits. I'm sure you do too, because they replicate minnows very well. Well, the chroming of a crankbait is done with a process called vacuum metallizing. And just the vacuum pressure applied to put that finish on will take these plastic lures, these prototypes, and break them. They don't have any strength or durability whatsoever. In fact, the very first ones that they sent us, Jake broke the first one taking it out of the package.
Oh, we're not off to a good start.
No, and they cost about $1,500 a piece.
Ooh.
And so there's a fair amount of money tied up in this, and they're delicate. And so you would laugh if you saw the early prototypes, Mike, because the only way we could put color on them was old school stuff. I cut up some witchcraft tape and stuck it in various places on the baits to be able to get a little color. I got out my Sharpies and I started adding little squiggle lines here and squiggle lines there using various colors of Sharpies, and even used a little spray paint to add touches of color here and there. And those baits were hideous. They looked horrible, but the idea was to get baits that would start to catch fish. Then once you get past that and you get into the more finished and refined processes, then they make finished versions of these lures, which are actually made out of butyrite, which is a hard plastic, a durable plastic that can be vacuum metallized. And at that point, we could create crankbaits that had all of the different color options available to them. But the early ones, the early prototypes, they look like Frankenstein.
Hang tight, Mark. We got to take a break. We're talking with Mark Romanack of Fishing 411, the website fishing411.net, fishing411.net. about the process of bringing a new bait to market and how they were intimately involved in this process. We'll talk about some fall fishing as well. That's coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can also hear us in Holland on WHTC. It's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Escanaba on WCHT, 600 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by MUCC's On the Ground program. OTG, as it's called, is a program to improve habitat for fish and wildlife across the state. For details, check out the Michigan United Conservation Club's website. It's MUCC.org. That's MUCC.org. And a reminder, if you want to sign up to become an MUCC member for the first time, you can save 25% by using the promo code MIKE, all caps MIKE, and save 25% on signing up to become an MUCC member, like I am. I'm a member of MUCC, and I'm a proud member, in fact. We're talking now with Mark Romanack. You know Mark. I mean, his name has been around the fishing business in Michigan for so long. Outdoor writer, former tournament angler, a host of Fishing 411 TV, and one of the guys behind the Troller's Bible, the precision trolling app. It's not in print form anymore, but you can put it on your phone, and I've got it on my phone, and if you troll, you probably got it on your phone, and if you don't, you should. Mark was telling a story in the first segment about being involved in development of a new crankbait. And Mark, I got to say, just being approached by those guys, the Bill Norman people, that had to be very cool. What an honor.
Well, it is, and it's something in the back of my mind. I always kind of wanted to develop a crankbait. I had some ideas of what I thought would create a crankbait that would be a fishy one that would catch fish consistently. I know what I don't like about crankbaits that are on the market, and I know what I do like about crankbaits that are on the market. So we were trying to combine all those things. Like, for example, most crankbaits that are walleye crankbaits have 3 hooks on them, and that's my pet peeve. I really don't like that third hook on a crankbait. It doesn't catch you any more fish, but it most certainly catches on everything else in a fishing boat. The carpet, your landing net, you name it. That third hook just seems to get in the way all the time. And personally, I think it helps us lose fish, and that third hook provides more leverage, and fish can shake and literally leverage that hook out of their mouth. So when you look at the new PWC, the Precise Walleye Crank, you'll notice it only has 2 hooks on it. But they're oversized. They're number 2 size hooks, which for a crankbait is a large hook, and they're also those wide bend style hooks that have become so popular here in recent years. These happen to be triple grips, which are a premium mustad hook.
So what else did you want to have on this? You wanted 2 hooks, not 3. What else did you really want to make sure was involved or built into this bait?
I wanted to make sure that it tuned out of the package, and so that people didn't have to worry about tuning it, that they could just put it in the water and go fish it. And as you well know, that's not necessarily the case with all crankbaits, but the good news is technology now is much, much better than it was even a decade or 2 ago. And so in general, crankbaits are better tuned in the package these days because manufacturers have a tighter tolerance that they can adhere to, which is a good thing. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still some imported baits that are coming out of China that are frankly junk, that are not going to be well-tuned. They're not going to be well-performing baits. Most of those lures are never prototyped. The very first time a fisherman touches them is going to be the first time they've ever been in the water. And so it's a process. And when we sat down with people from Bill Lewis, we basically made them understand that this wasn't going to be something we could snap our fingers and make happen. It was going to take time, and we weren't going to put our name on a bait until we were convinced that it was going to be a successful bait. And then we also made them understand that they need a family of baits. You can't just make one crankbait and think you've got it figured out, because anybody that knows crankbaits knows that one bait doesn't always work. you got to have an assortment of different sizes of baits and different styles of baits. And so I got them to commit to creating a family of crankbaits, of which we've only done one. So this is the infancy. This is the very beginning. But over the next 10 years, Jake and I hope to have a complete family of baits for Bill Lewis suitable for walleye.
That is very cool. So this is just the beginning.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a process that I'm going to start and that I expect that Jake will finish. And that was also kind of the goal here is, Jake, of course, is deeply ingrained in everything we do. He will be taking over our businesses at some point in time. And he's a very knowledgeable crankbait fisherman. There's very few people that have more faith in a crankbait than Jake. And very few people that have more skill sets on what it takes to catch fish on crankbait. So he's the perfect guy to carry this flag deep into the future.
Does this bait rattle?
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that because, Bill Lewis was the first company to actually create a rattling sound that replicates bait fish. I don't know if you knew this or not, but the rattle trap, the sound signature associated with the rattle trap is designed to replicate thread fin shad, which is a popular forage in most of the southern bass lakes. So they were trying to create a lure that sounded like shad. Okay. So this particular lure, the Precise Walleye Crank, doesn't rattle fast enough to create that sound, nor do we want that sound. We wanted a rattle that was more about catching attention. And so a high-pitched rattle that fish could hear and zone in on from a great distance. And the reason that's important is because in walleye fishing, we're often fishing in murky or dirty water, and a lot of guys fish at night, and a rattle bait is critically important at night because it helps the fish zero in on where that bait is. Silent baits that are made out of balsa, for example, that have no rattles, make no sound in the water, are very difficult for fish to find in murky water.
So did you guys work up a dive curve on this bait already?
Well, but of course, Mike.
I figured.
Yeah, we got it. And we got the dive curve on mono. We got the dive curve on Fireline, of course, which is so popular. And we also have a dive curve using the offshore tackle snap weights, the 50+2 method. And all of that will be released here very soon, yet this fall. And the 98-cent question that I'm getting from everybody is, are they available to buy yet? And the short answer to that is no. It takes time to get lures through distribution and into past distribution into the dealer's hands. And right now, they're not in dealer's hands, but they will be here shortly. Our goal was to have these widely available before the fall walleye derby started, but didn't quite make that goal.
And what's it called again? What's the name of this bait?
Precise Walleye Crank. I just call it the PWC for short.
PWC. That is so very cool. So very cool. A related question here. We were talking about color early on versus action. Which one in a crankbait is more important, color or action?
Action, in my opinion, by far. That stated, if you have a great action on a lure, but it has no fish-attracting color, it's probably still not going to be a very productive lure. So one hand washes the other in that situation. And this particular bait will be available in 24 different colors, which is a pretty good starting number. But some manufacturers, like if you look at the Bandit, for example, I think they have over 100 color choices to choose from. Now, and eventually I would like to see this crankbait offered in more colors. But the truth of the matter is most of us put too much emphasis on color, not enough emphasis on action. I think action is the most important thing. If that action is catching fish, a multitude of different colors will probably also be successful.
You talked about wanting to get this on the market in time for fall walleye fishing on Lake Erie. Why is Lake Erie this time of year so productive and so good at producing big fish?
Well, a big part of it is that not only do we have large numbers of walleye in Lake Erie, Saginaw Bay falls into that category too. Green Bay is also in that category, Monascon Bay. There's lots of places where there are big populations of walleye. But in the fall, the reason why crankbaits work so well is because walleyes are feeding heavily on large forage species. Things like alewives, gizzard shad become very important to them. Ciscoes are also another important Great Lakes forage fish that walleyes key on. And because these forage fish are bigger and because crankbaits are bigger, crankbaits do a really good job of replicating what the fish are actually eating.
So how would somebody get started on Lake Erie? If you've never fished that lake before, where would you go this time of year and how would you fish it?
Well, what you're going to find is that in the fall, these fish are going to be deeper, maybe on average, than what they would be any other time of the year. The water's going to be cool. So you're going to have to concentrate on trolling slow. 1.5 miles an hour is maybe a good starting point, and then potentially even slowing down from there. Watching your sonar, looking for marks that are going to be from 15 foot down to 30 foot down is where you're typically going to find them in the fall. Now, there are days, especially those nice warm sunny days, when those fish might be a little higher in the water column. But for the most part, in the fall, you're looking at deeper fish. And I don't start fishing personally until I'm marking concentrations of fish. And for me, on my sonar unit, if I'm seeing 3 or 4 fish on the graph at a time, I'm comfortable that I'm looking at good numbers of fish. To put that in perspective, a 20-degree transducer cone, which is the average transducer cone, at 30 foot of water, if you've got 3 fish on the screen, that's 3 fish in an area that's less than 10 to 15 foot in diameter. So that's a pretty good concentration of fish.
So can we see this new bait anywhere? Is it on the Bill Lewis website? Is it on your Fishing 411 website yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Bill Lewis has got it out there. They're talking about it quite a bit. There's a couple of little short videos that talk about it, that give you some more insight of what we were trying to do and give you some close-up pictures of it, that type of thing. The other thing that we really didn't talk too much about, but something that I wanted to see happen is that I knew Bill Lewis, they make a lot of different colors of baits, and their finishes are pretty darn exceptional. And you know as well as I do that if a crankbait has a really nice, high-quality finish, it's going to catch not only the fish's attention, but also the fisherman's attention.
Exactly, yes.
And their finishes are just second to none. I mean, they are, and again, it goes back to, the name, the Precise Walleye Crank. It's a premium lure that has premium finishes, premium hooks, premium design. It's not going to be cheap. You're talking about an $11 crankbait. But it is also has the best of all features to it, the best that the money can buy.
Well, and I know, the crankbait now, I know you've been intimately involved in offshore products over the years, bringing those to market. Are we going to see, is there going to be a Romanack line of rods and reels and all that good stuff too? Or is this the beginning of something huge?
Never say never, but I don't know. I mean, we've always tried to avoid being in the retail business of selling things retail. The exception of that would be, of course, our app. But the beauty of that is that we don't handle the sales of that either. It goes through Google and it goes through Apple. So they just send us checks at the end of the month, which is
that's not too bad either.
Nice so I don't have to inventory things and stuff like that. So I doubt that you're going to see that. But as far as for signature series stuff, we've been approached by other people to do other signature series things. Just waiting on the right things. I don't want to put my name on something I'm not particularly excited about. I don't think that's a good business model. So if somebody came to me with the right, signature idea, with the right product, we probably would be all about that.
There you go. Keep that door open. All right. Mark, always a pleasure. Congrats on this new project, and we will talk again soon. Mark Romanack of Fishing 411 TV, the website fishing411.net, fishing411.net. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. You can hear us just up the coast in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. And you can hear us on the other side of the state in Saginaw on WSGW AM and FM, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. In fact, I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. I borrowed this one small part of the building from Pat Johnston. I consider this Pat's studio. But for 3 hours a week, he lets me take one little corner. But Pat's doing a wonderful job helping out with the show. As always, Pat, I do appreciate it. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard, as they have for me. In fact, the other day, I was down in my office. I have an office in the basement of the house, and I've got this real nice window that I can see outside, and it's an egress window, but it's very nicely landscaped, and there's boulders there. In fact, the folks from Reader did that. And I'm looking out that window, and I see a couple guys come walking by the window. I'm thinking, the Reader guys are here. I wonder what they're doing. So I went up and talked to them. They were there for round one of the fall cleanup. They were there to take down the plants that had, the frost had hit them and the freeze had hit them, and just kind of clean the yard up. And I thought, well, this is nice because it's one less thing that I have to do. And while I'm in the studio today, there's also a reader guy there today blowing out the sprinkler system, closing up the water feature. So it's getting to be that time of year, isn't it? Now, these are, and also while they were there, they mowed it one last time. I've been mowing it all summer, but they mowed it for me too. So it's like, man, this is nice. And looking forward to what's coming down the road. If you want some snow removal, they can take care of that as well. Year-round maintenance of your lawn and property, the folks from Reader can take care of it. The website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. I enjoyed that conversation with Mark Romanack. Mark's a good friend of mine, known him for many, many years. Many, many years. I mean, we go way back. I've always respected his ability and his knowledge and his willingness to share that knowledge and information with others. You know, we all know people who are really, really good at what they do, but they don't want to share it. They don't want to let that knowledge out because, maybe they don't want others to be as successful or as good as they are. Mark Romanack's not one of those people. And the fact that he's got his son Jake working with him now is pretty darn cool. So let me see. Let me go over my list here. The month of Rocktober is almost over, which means what? Halloween is right around the corner, which means the whitetail rut is right around the corner, which means the firearm deer season is right around the corner. It was a great fall for fall colors, wasn't it? There was something about this year, and I've heard people say, well, if you get a year that's dry or whatever, and I'm sure there is something in Mother Nature that affects how vibrant and beautiful the colors are, but this year they were just outstanding. They're gone now, so what you're looking at is what you're going to be looking at until we get snow on the ground, which, for a guy who's not a big wintertime fan, that's a little bit depressing, but it is what it is, right? I mean, I will take Michigan and the winters and the occasional snow and the cold. I'll take that. We were talking with meteorologist Mark Torregrossa in the second hour, and he's got a place down in Florida, and his place it didn't get wiped out, but severe damage from the hurricane that went through there. Pat and I in the studio here were talking earlier, hey, we don't have hurricanes in Michigan. We don't really have earthquakes. We don't really have massive wildfires. It's a pretty darn good place to live, isn't it? And we get 4 different seasons. We get to see the fall colors. We get to see the spring green up. We get to see the snow. We get to see the beautiful summertime. It's a pretty darn good place to live. And I like it here. I like it here a lot. So anyway, the rut is coming up, the whitetail rut. That's the whitetail breeding season. If you haven't been able to get out in the whitetail woods much so far this season, you might want to change that here in the next couple of weeks. You might want to get out in the woods and maybe even do an all-day sit. I know it can be hard. Unless you've got a really nice setup, it can be tough to sit there all day long from before it gets dark until after it gets dark again. That can be a rough sit. But if there's ever a time of the season to do it, these next couple of weeks would be the time. Maybe a big buck is going to become preoccupied with other things on his mind and become a little less wary, a little less cautious. You might actually see them out during the daylight. We know they're out there, right? We know those big bucks are out there, but a lot of times they're nocturnal. They're cruising at night, and that's how they got to be big bucks, right? Because people passed on them when they were smaller, and they didn't present the shot opportunity. So it's coming. It's coming. Mark also said, I couldn't tell where he was going at first. He says, yes, it's going to be warm, then it's going to be cold. Then there's going to be snow, and then there's not going to be snow. But he said it's volatility. It's volatile. The weather patterns are definitely more squirrely than they used to be. But he said overall, it looks like it could be a little more moisture and a little colder. So maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we will wrap up this week's show, as we do almost every week, with another good friend of mine, a guy I've worked with for many, many years. His name is Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire. Well, his name isn't really that, right? His name is Dave Minar, but I call him Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. So we're going to wrap up this week's show with wild chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar and another great recipe. I don't know what it is. I would suspect it might be venison, but hey, you never know what Dave's going to come up with. Stick around. We'll find out after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery, also known as the Big Guy, and I am so glad to have you along with us. Also glad to be able to wrap up each week's show with my good friend, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. And he's with us once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
I am pretty darn good. Rainy day on the day we're recording this, as everybody should realize that. I mean, it's statewide. It's coming down pretty heavy in Standish.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. When we were down in Ohio last week, it was so cold. I came home and it felt like it was summertime again, and now it feels like we're getting back more to the weather as it should be.
Did you do any good down there?
Yeah, I didn't take it. It didn't kill anything, but saw some nice bucks. He's got Bill Piles, my buddy down there, has a minimum size that you can legally, or not legally, but that he wants you to shoot. And I just didn't see one in range that size. But other guys saw some nice bucks. James saw a big buck just out of range. So it was a good hunt.
Oh, good. Good. Glad you had a good time.
Always have a good time. Now, if I would have taken a buck, this recipe I understand you have for us would have been a great choice. I remember this recipe, Dave. It's a really good one.
We did this for the TV show
yes.
and years ago.
Yeah, what is it?
It's a hearty venison barley soup. And for the weather coming up, I think it's going to be a perfect fit.
Perfect.
That, and we might do a stew next time, getting closer towards rifle season. So you're going to use about a 6 to 8 quart heavy pot. This makes a large batch. It freezes really well. You can make it up in advance, take it to deer camp, whatever you like to do. So you need about 3 to 3.5 pounds of meat, trimmed of all visible fat and a lot of the silver off. You could use neck meat. You could use front shoulder, anything, because it cooks a long time and it will get very tender. And some of the lesser cuts of meat have more flavor anyway. So you need a couple of 2 medium onions or 1 great big one, diced up fine, 4 to 5 stalks of celery, diced the same way. You need 1 to 1.5 pounds of the barley. You want to don't get instant, because you need this to have the gluten in it so that it will thicken up. So just get regular pearled barley. And use some of that better than bouillon. You can get it at the grocery store, or some of the restaurant supply houses sell a real nice one too. About a half a teaspoon each of basil and oregano. Or you could use actually a teaspoon of the Italian spice, which would be very good. 2 pounds of frozen mixed vegetables. 3 large potatoes, diced a medium fine, a little bit of olive oil, fresh ground black pepper to taste, whatever you like. So after you get the meat all trimmed up and cubed up to your size you want it, sprinkle pepper all over it, grate fresh pepper on it. And so in a large pot with a little bit of olive oil, you're going to brown the meat off first of all. Get that on. You can on high, just keep stirring it and stirring it and stirring it. So until it gets all brown. Then you add the garlic, the onions, the celery, and just keep cooking that a little bit, and then add the water, except everything else except for the barley and the potatoes. You can add more water to it, and just remember that you're going to have space for the potatoes and the barley. Bring that up to a boil, and if you get a little bit of skim on top, by all means take a spoon and get rid of that. And then after it gets up to a nice boil, and you cook it for 4 or 5 minutes is all, add the barley and save the potatoes. Now, you want to make sure that when you get the barley in, it comes back up to a boil, turn it down to a simmer. Now, here's where you want to taste. Make sure if you got the spices in there, would be a good time to put it in when you were stirring it around with all of that other meat and stuff. That breaks the flavor loose. And taste it for the base. If that's the flavor you look, simmer it for at least an hour, hour and a half. And then When it starts to get tender a little bit, add the potatoes. And if it's too thick, you can add some more water because barley is a really good thickening agent. Plus, it has a lot of good flavor to it. And then just simmer it until everything's all nice and tender. And like I said, this freezes well. Take it to camp, whatever you like. But man, oh man, what a day would be good for a soup like that. Hearty.
It sounds wonderful. And real quick before I let you go, you made a statement I want to follow up on. You said the lesser cuts sometimes have more flavor. What does that mean, Dave?
True. Because some of the muscle meat, it gets used all the time, has a much more robust flavor than, say, the tenderloin. The tender's nice and, and soft and tender and all of that. But like neck meat and front shoulder meat has more flavor to it to me, Especially if you got a couple bones you could throw in there, and that would help out, too, to add some more flavor.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying now. Yeah. And where do we, David, if we want to try your cooking in person, where do we find you?
Well, Oscar and Joey's Roadhouse, exit 136, Birch Run. Take a tenth of a mile east of the intersection, right at the next traffic light of Dixie and Birch Run Road. And we're right there in the corner. Big red building, Oscar and Joey's.
Hours these days?
Thursday, we open at 4 and serve till 9. Friday and Saturday, we open at 4 and serve till 10. And Sunday at 1 till 8 o'clock.
Wonderful.
And by that time, everybody's beat.
All right, David, always a pleasure. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you, because if you weren't listening, there would be no reason to do this show. Hey, my website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Do not hesitate to reach out to me with questions, comments, criticisms, questions for the Ask Avery segment. The website, Mike Avery Outdoors. The email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My name is obviously Mike Avery, and I will talk with you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.